Okay, we're live.
Hi.
Hi. Heather's going to do our preamble. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this doesn't work if I do it because. All right, hold on. Okay.
I don't have it written down, Heather. I just
Okay.
have the notes for. Welcome.
Welcome to Shit You
Hi.
Don't Know.
God, we suck at this so bad.
I know, right?
Terrible.
The
Terrible.
podcast where real life meets real talk, where your horse. Okay, we have to start that over.
Outtake. Got it. Right there. Outtake. Just keep going. Pretend you're recording a TikTok video and you could just start over and edit it out. That's how it works.
Okay. Welcome to Shit You Don't Know, the podcast where real life meets real talk. We are your host, Heather Matchett.
And I'm Laura Beth Martin.
A pharmacist and a nurse with over 40 years of experience and plenty of stories to share. We're diving into the life lessons, mistakes, and wish I'd known that moments that can change the course of your life. So join us for a mix of humor, heart, and helpful advice as we uncover the shit you don't know, your go-to guide for the shit that no one motherfucking told you about.
That part, yes.
Yes.
And to the top of the list of things that Heather and I do not know about, it's going to be technology. Specifically, podcasting technology. I feel
Right.
somewhere in my heart, I feel like at some point someone is going to feel sorry for us, and they're going to. Hadn't happened yet, but it could. Like they're going to they're going to feel sorry for us so much so that they're going to be like, this ridiculousness could make a lot of money, and so we're going to give them a real setup where they're not 30 minutes every time they record trying to figure out how to make it work.
I mean, if
Exactly right,
Alex's
media.
team from Call Her Daddy is listening, or like one of those people who just who would love to bestow some charity upon us and like take our lives over and make everything easier, that would certainly be amazing.
I would not get my
welcome
feelings hurt if Karen and Georgia at My Favorite Murder had their people call my people, which is just me, and they were like, "Listen, we want more of that. We want more of Southern middle-aged women who are pissed off at the world. Everybody needs it. Everybody needs it."
I agree.
Just don't know it yet. That's the thing. It's like they just don't know it yet. Anyway, so how's your week?
Like I said, month of Sundays. It's been a month of Sundays. Oh my gosh! I wish I could get my life together.
I can legitimately tell you. I can legitimately tell you, and I'm not embarrassed to admit this. I have never used illegal drugs ever, and I'm not asking for anyone in the public to give me a pat on the back. But I will tell you that today is the third week of February of 2025, and I have never in my life wanted to do drugs so badly, to just disassociate from it, all the things, and give up.
Yes.
Like I am pep talking myself out of the bed every day. Every day I'm pep talking myself.
I guess this is a good place to place my own personal disclaimer that if you haven't caught on,
y'all are gonna like her disclaimers.
If you haven't like caught on by the amount of podcasts of us, which is what two that you've listened to, we're both kind of we're both kind of liberal, crunchy people. So
we are what they call raging. Yeah. And we are both big blue dots in big red states.
Yes.
So,
very, very much.
Yeah,
and,
you've been warned.
So this has been we've had a little hiatus, and this has been a little bit of an adjustment, shall we say, to the goings on around us.
That's like going to the doctor because you know you're pregnant and you find out that instead of one, there's like 6 in there. That's the kind of the adjustment that we're mentally having right now.
Right. And I think too, just like, because I don't think that the general populace understands what this administration is going to do to healthcare. I mean, because that's the world I
No,
live in,
no.
and that's what I'm
They have no
seeing.
idea the shit show that's about to happen.
And
They
I'm
have
just
no
like,
idea.
y'all,
They
whoo,
have no idea. It's
Lord.
really scary. Yeah. Yeah.
So
We thought it was
so
we thought COVID was the worst it was going to get, y'all. We thought that that was rock bottom, but I got news for you. We're not
yeah.
even halfway to rock bottom, I don't think, at this point.
Right, right. And just been like a lot of like crazy shit in the news too. Like, I mean, did you hear
Yeah.
about that nurse who got attacked? Was it in Florida? I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. But
What?
like by a Baker Act patient that like beat her to death pretty much in the
What?
emergency room?
I did.
Yes.
I did not hear about this, but proceed to
Yes.
share with the class.
Yeah, and I'm not
Why did
100%
she get attacked?
solid on the
Not that
details.
there's ever a reason to attack a nurse, but what in there? What?
I think they were just crazy. Like they were just
Oh,
crazy. They came
okay.
in and they were just crazy. Like I don't know all the details.
Oh,
But
that's
because like I've
awful.
been sort of dissociative from the news as well, or trying to,
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
least as much as I possibly can,
That's the
because
only way I'm surviving. I mean, I
yeah,
read it. I read the news.
yeah,
I stopped watching it a long time ago.
right,
Like
right,
well,
yeah,
before all this nonsense started, like back during Katrina days. Huh. Um, because I am a person, and I do think it goes along with my ADHD, whatever my neuro is, that once I've seen an image, it's very hard for me to forget it.
yeah,
I've since learned that's not true for everybody.
right,
Like my husband and other people I've talked to over the years, they don't retain those images. Like I'll describe something and he'll be like, I don't like I remember that happening, but I don't remember that image like that like he has no and I like there are still things in my mind from Katrina that were on the news and videos and stuff that like those images will never be gone. There are images from the original Gulf War when I was a kid. Like that stuff doesn't go away. So I stopped watching the news for the most part then because I realized I couldn't filter the images before they got to me. And so during Katrina, I didn't sleep for like 3 days while we had evacuees here and so I was working all day and helping with evacuees in the evening, and then I could not go home and sleep at night because of the images on the news. And so I've learned to read so that I can hopefully filter some of the content before it gets to my brain so that I can sleep at night.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, luckily we don't even have network news in this house. So like we're only
no, we don't
streaming
either.
services. We don't have it.
Yeah, true.
And I get enough. And I was talking to a patient about this the other night, because I always tease my patients no matter what news they're watching when I walk in the room. I always say you need to turn that off. That's not going to do nothing but make you mad. You know, and
And that's
so
true.
so it's like there's a part of me that like understands why people are pissed, because no matter if you've got it on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, like no matter what
Hmm.
your flavor is, it's all very inflammatory. Like we're
It is.
not, and
It's all
so
clickbait. Yeah,
yeah, and then
for sure.
like
That's not
you
new.
know, yeah, and it's
Yeah,
just, but I feel like maybe because I've had like a detox from that, that when I see
maybe.
it, I'm like, ooh, no wonder
Yeah.
people are like, oh, these crazy liberals. But really,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm just the kind of person who wants good people to get good health care. Like that's what I
Yeah.
want.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and for me, from a humanitarian aspect, I mean, it's been a rough week. It's been a
Yeah.
rough month.
It
So it's like,
I think that's the understatement
yeah,
of the year. So it's been a little rough. It's been a
yeah,
little rough. And
it's
so I think it's probably good, along with Heather's disclaimer. If this is not what you want to hear, then we're not for you, and we don't have a problem with that. You can feel free to exit the podcast at any point, and like it's not going to hurt our feelings because we almost don't have any anymore when it comes to people like that. Because this is this is who we are, and if that's going to change, it'll be because we decide it's going to change, not because somebody comes after us that they don't like the way that we feel about something. And I'm kind of done pandering and presenting and doing all the fun things for people. So just exit stage left or right, whatever the state, I don't care. Don't
Yeah.
care.
I
Um,
mean, my course of like I always try not to offend people. I try not to
oh,
make it
sure,
personal, but
sure,
there are definite policies that
sure.
are coming down
We're
the
past that.
pipeline that are
We're past
going
that.
to hurt
Hmm.
people.
Yeah, we're
And
past that.
yeah, so
Absolutely. Hmm.
I mean, remember on my podcast where we were talking about like end of life planning, where
Yes,
like if cuts to
yes,
Medicare and Medicaid happen, you might
yes.
want to consider taking
Hmm.
your granny home. Well,
Yep. They're
here
coming.
we are,
They're coming.
massive cuts.
They are
So
in the works. Yes,
hold on to your panties, folks.
yes, yes. And that's
Yeah.
it's something that occurred to me too, because now that we've seen all of these, the beginnings of the massive layoffs of federal workers, and there's been sort of this sowing the seeds of discontent among the citizens themselves. And I've seen some comments, just sort of randomly, but people were like, government workers need to be accountable and all these things. And I'm like, when did we start turning on each other like a pack of dogs? Because government workers are literally paid out of our tax dollars. And having worked for the government, I spent almost 4 years working for the VA in pharmacy school. And let me just say, it was the one of the honors of my life to be in that job. And I was just an intern. I was just a pharmacy student. I was a cog in the wheel, I was the person back there slapping the label on your prescription, and there was still a pharmacist, at the end of the rainbow there checking everything. And so, but being a federal worker, even as a young person, I was very proud to be in that position. And there were lots of checks and balances. So I feel like we've got these people in positions of power who are making it sound like federal workers sit around all day and don't do anything. Um, and that's just simply not the case from my personal experience. And that
Sure.
really disturbs me. So I want to be real clear that I'm always going to stand with my other citizens who work for the federal government who are doing their job. I, I,
Hmm.
I've been shocked. And so now we're seeing these layoffs occur, and then suddenly people don't have access to things that their tax dollars are paying for, like, national parks and, presidential libraries. And it's like, now, wait a minute, this is not what we signed up for. I know that's got to be what some voters are thinking, plus the cuts to the VA and some other things. It's like, okay, wait. I didn't think that's what we were doing here. So let me be also clear in our circle of sort of space. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay for me to be wrong. It's okay for Heather to be wrong, because we'll admit it. We will look at a situation and we will sort through and review and go, you know what, I messed that up. Like, I had that so wrong. And so if you are somebody who's hung in here that's wrong and happens to have voted for the current administration or have supported it and really thought, you were getting one thing and now you've got another, I want to give you the courage to be able to say to people, hey guys, I think I made the wrong choice, because what I thought we were getting is not what we got. And you need to know that other citizens um, are going to support your statement, not because they agree with us, but because you're looking and realizing that the agenda, that you were sold a product that was not properly represented. I mean, there were some things we knew, and I think that there were citizens who were really like, oh, well, they're just saying that. I don't really feel that way. And like now you're seeing, oh shit, this is bad. Like these are not good people. They look like me, but they are not the people I thought they were. So be brave enough to say, this isn't right. And I'm not going to continue to support this. And I'm not going to stand around and wait for it to get better. Like, be brave enough.
Right. I mean, I have always said from the very beginning of this extremely tumultuous election cycle that I am for transparency of our tax dollars. Like I'm
Absolutely.
definitely for that. But I
1,000%.
feel like to make the cuts that we're making without considering the fact that the person making the cuts makes like about $8 million a day off the government contracts that he has is
Uh-huh.
a little.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I
And
feel some kind of way
also,
about that.
like we're talking about some people who have never worked a real manual job in their life. They would not have a clue
Exactly.
like to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and eat a Pop Tart on the way, you know, to work or whatever, and then be out in the heat, in the rain, in the sleet, delivering mail, repairing the roads, working, changing bed. This isn't these guys. That's not what they did. Let's be real about this. These are incredibly wealthy, highly educated people who have who are let's call them
Nepo babies.
thank you. Yes, that is my kid's favorite term is a nepo baby, and that's what you've got running the government. Neither of these people have ever done any sort of public service, like been in the military or been in a war or had to be responsible for the lives of other people. Like, yes, you know,
Well, I
he's
mean,
been president
JD Vance has, but we haven't seen him.
but but he's
Where he's
he's not
at.
making the executive orders yet.
That's true.
Yet. But I'm talking about, and I know some people are gonna be like, well, Trump was president before, and that makes him leader of the military. Okay. But he has never had to worry and put his self on the line. Like he's not dying from the effects of Agent Orange. I have
Yeah.
family members that have already died and are currently dying from them. So I just, like there's a lot of, for me, there's so little respect for these two main people, gentlemen, whatever you want to call them, that are running things because I don't think they have a true grasp. Like let's gut the postal system. It's not making money. Well, dude, this is a government, not a corporation. You're not going to make
Yeah.
money on everything. The
Well,
postal
and the and
system is a service.
and the asinine flip side of that is that they made severe cuts to the one entity that actually does make money, which is the national parks.
I know.
And I'm just
But
like,
because they think that because their understanding of what park rangers do is not at all what they do.
right.
They have no real concept. Like I'm sure they think a pharmacist just stands back there and counts to 30 and puts a label on the bottle. And if
Yeah.
that's all I did, I would have thousands of people dead every day.
Or maybe they just think that nurses just bring people turkey sandwiches.
I guess so.
I
I don't
mean, I
know.
do bring people a lot of turkey sandwiches, though. We'll say
Right. You also run a code though, right? Right?
that.
You
Yeah.
also run that code, do those chest compressions. Like there's just there's such a disconnect because these men are so wealthy. There's such a disconnect from
Mhm.
what they really do, from what really happens in everyday life and the cuts that they're making. That the math doesn't math in any way, shape, or form.
No.
If I did my job the way that these two men are doing their job, I I I would be in jail for manslaughter just because I would have accidentally killed somebody because I was just blatantly just not doing my job. Like it's wild to me. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's not what this podcast is about.
Not at all. But hey, you asked me how I was doing,
Boom.
and I had to tell you,
Poor people listening. They're like, God, I
not
thought we were
good.
talking about pharmacy benefits. This is just politics.
I
Ugh.
know, right? And nobody wants to
Unfortunately,
talk
they've
about that.
brought no, and unfortunately though they have brought politics right into our living room and kitchen and everywhere, so we can't get away from it. I
No,
miss
we
the
can't.
days. I miss the days when you could.
Yes.
Remember those?
Yeah. It's been a long time ago, but I remember.
It
I,
was.
I
It
think
was a
I think I miss the days because I feel like politics has always been, at least in my lifetime, present in the healthcare space. I think I miss the days when I was very much not aware of that.
yes. Oh, that's a great point. So what Heather is saying is she misses when okay, pugs are snoring. I'm sorry, y'all. It's so loud. Lizzie is just like I can't make her face move. Anyway, she's oh, there's the chicken, so we're good. Um, but what Heather's talking about is there was a time when we could just go to work as healthcare professionals and take care of patients and do our job, and we didn't have to worry whether or not that was going to be interrupted by people who thought they knew better with their policies and strategies that were aligned with their party.
Yes.
And that's really what we deal with a lot. A
Yeah.
lot. Her more so than me, actually. Because mine's already so heavily legislated in a lot of ways. But she does direct patient care. So, anywho.
Yes. Fun
So,
times.
are we
So what are we
ready?
talking about
What are
today?
we
What
talking
are we
about today? We are talking about we're talking about the American pharmacy system.
Woo,
It's just
doggy.
yeah, I know. Yay. The good, the bad, and the broken is what we've titled this one. So, pharmacy in America is unique in the way that it's set up. But I do want to mention before we get too deep into it that everything that we're talking about today regarding our system and how it's set up here in America or in the United States, depending on where you're listening from, how you refer to it, that this is all for educational information. Like, we are not giving you advice on how to pick a pharmacy plan or anything like that. It's not medical or financial advice. This is just educational information from the other side of the curtain. So we can see everything. We know how everything works behind it. We're just kind of pulling that back for you to look as education. You do with that information what you want to. But yeah, that's what we're talking about today. So, as a lot of you guys probably know, I am a full time, well, not full time anymore. I'm a half time to 3/4 time,
Yay!
yay, uh, pharmacist. So I've been in the pharmacy space for 2 decades as a pharmacist, but I've actually worked in a pharmacy since I was 15 years old. So a really long time. So I've seen this system grow and change and merge into a beast we could have never imagined, you know, all those years ago. And Heather deals from it from the perspective of hospital. Of course, she's done hospice nursing as well, but she's seeing more the inpatient, I would say, side of it, trying to get coordination of medicines and things like that. So that's what we're talking about today. So why is that important? Because some of you listening are probably like, well, I never get sick. I'm 32 and I'm not sick and I'm fine. Why does it matter? Well, if it doesn't matter to you right now, it will. And maybe tomorrow if you have parents or small children, because the entire system is not set up great. It just really isn't. So, on average, according to some information from 2021, each person in America, regardless of age, sex, gender, ethnicity, did not matter. Each person averaged about $1,400 in pharmacy related costs. And that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So even if you took zero, that means somebody else took way more. And so the average is around $1,400. And 1 in 3 from that same study, 1 in 3 cannot afford to take their maintenance medicines regularly due to cost. And so that matters because it just drives the price of healthcare way, way up. As a pharmacist, I've seen everything from patients having to get divorced so that they could be on Medicaid and actually afford their medicines. I've seen patients go without blood thinners, diabetic medicine. I mean, you name it. They will go without it if they have to. If it means, groceries and lights stay on, patients will go without it. And it's incredibly heartbreaking to see someone who has worked their whole life and their little body's just broken and they can't afford their blood thinner and they're walking out of there and all you can do is hopes and prayers that they don't develop a clot, that then could end their life or end them up in the hospital in a really serious situation. So I don't know, what Heather, do you want to share what your experience has been from? She's like, how much time do I have? I saw that smile.
Okay, so I mean, to sum it up, it's a shit show. Like it's a shit
Yep.
show. So you can't. The amount of injury that I see, just on a shift by shift basis, I would say
Really?
probably 30 to 40%. Like if I've got 4 patients,
Yeah.
one of them is in the hospital because they can't afford their medication and they're sick because of it.
Wow.
So that's
I wish
a
I
that
could say
that's
that surprises me, but I,
I
I
mean,
think that, yeah.
we had a little hiatus. It used to be really heavily DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, can't
Mm,
afford your
mhm,
insulin, and
mhm.
then For the last, I would say, like year and a half, we haven't
Hmm.
seen as much of that because
Right.
everything
Right.
was kind of controlled.
Right. Do we remember why, guys? Do we need a
Yeah,
mini lesson on that?
maybe we need to
A little
reiterate that
tiny.
that was because
So
the last administration so very nicely capped the cost of insulin.
yes, yes,
And so now we're starting to see a lot of that. And I'm going to tell you
yeah.
the other thing that we're seeing a lot of, unfortunately, and I think that it's because of the demands of the atmosphere we're living in at this moment,
Hmm.
is a
Hmm.
lot of drug and alcohol related injury, too.
Sure.
A
Sure.
lot of that.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
and a lot of that, too, is if you think about it, not having access to good healthcare, and
Yes. Support
so
services.
I
Hmm.
would say a lot of the patients that we see on a day-to-day basis definitely fall into that crevice, because
Hmm.
it is a crevice of people who cannot afford their
Hmm.
medication.
Right. And for those of you guys at home that don't know, DKA is diabetic ketoacidosis. So that's when your sugar's all jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially. But it can lead to death. You can be really sick when you get to the hospital because of it. So it's a big deal. So what's before we spend the entire time talking about how all the horrible things about our pharmacy and system, let's talk just a little bit about what are the advantages of it, because if you've traveled to any other countries, pharmacies are different in every country, and the laws that govern it are different in every country. So generally, what you see is the more developed a nation is, the more access a patient will have to services, pharmacies, etc. So in the U.S., most patients do live within a short distance of a pharmacy. There are 24-hour pharmacies. We have drive-throughs. We now have delivery from even a lot of, or some major retailers also offer that now. That's been rolled out recently through Walmart, and I'm sure other people will follow suit. Your local independent's been delivering since God was boy, so that part's not new either. Um, there's retail, there's hospital pharmacy, there's specialty pharmacies that deal in very, very expensive medications that are hard to get or hard to make. And then, of course, you have some mail order options as well. And that all should be said that, well, accessibility is good in America, but that's not true everywhere. There are things such as pharmacy deserts, just like there are food deserts where you have areas of population who only have one pharmacy per so many miles. And so they have to travel a great distance or an inconvenient distance to get their medications. One of the things that you learn as a pharmacist very early on is the more barriers you put between a patient and their medication, the less likely they are to take it.
Yes.
And so distance is definitely one of those things, distance, cost, ease of use, number of times they got to take it. All those things matter. And so distance is definitely a big factor. If a patient can't get to you to get their medicine, or they no longer drive, like all of these things factor into the cost of healthcare. And that matters because your tax dollars are going to pay for some of that, whether you want them to or not, they do. So it behooves everyone in America to get on the bus about making healthcare accessible and cheaper, and that includes prescription drugs, because when a patient can care for themselves, the overall spend for healthcare goes down.
Sure. And when people can affordably do this, the abuse of resources also
Mhm.
goes significantly lower.
Yes,
We
correct.
know that people end up in the emergency room all the time because they don't have access to their blood pressure
Mhm.
medicine,
Mhm.
and when
Mhm.
we're talking about like fiscal responsibility of programs like Medicare and Medicaid,
Mhm.
we have to think about that as as a comprehensive pie,
Right.
not just slices. And
Correct.
part of making sure that that pie is whole is making sure that people can actually afford the medicines that we prescribe to them and that they can
Yes.
get them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And get them reliably,
Yes.
consistently. Just providing something to a patient once or twice, you haven't done anything. You
Right.
haven't really done a whole lot, except give them hope and then snatch it away. So that's
Yeah.
all. the The other good thing about America and our healthcare pharmacy system is that you have a pharmacist at every pharmacy. If you can't have a pharmacy open, it's against the law, both state and, and federal levels, basically, that you cannot, like, the pharmacy can't be open if the pharmacist isn't there. There are laws governing that. So you have almost instantaneous access to someone who's highly trained in medication, in disease state management, medical conditions. Like now, like I have a doctorate, so nobody calls me Dr. Martin. But that is what I have. I went to school for a really long time to get it. And all of your pharmacists are just about going to have that. Now we're reaching the point where the people who received a little bit less of a clinical education are still working, but they're getting to retirement age. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. They're moving into that place where they're ready. So you can walk in and almost be guaranteed at every pharmacy you're going to talk to somebody that has a doctorate and had to pass a national board certification before they ever set foot in a pharmacy to work by themselves. That's just the way it works. And so that person is a fount of information that people need to be aware of. If you aren't aware that pharmacists are that highly trained, you need to talk to one. Just pick their brain. They will love it because we're all nerds at heart. So that is good because that's not true in every country. There are pharmacies in other countries. There's no pharmacist in there. There's just somebody behind the counter selling stuff. But here you can get answers to your questions. What can I take? What can I not take? Is this going to interfere with my blood pressure medicine, etc. And so I think that is a very underutilized resource because pharmacists have not been great for advocating for themselves because we should have been allowed to do more in healthcare a long time ago because we're trained to do it already. So, in the United States, we do have cutting edge treatment, research. Oh, we did. Let's keep our fingers
Did.
crossed. Did. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Like when you have entire sections of the NIH closed, that's a problem. But anyway, so we do have access.
Well,
We
and I
have,
feel like this is the next topic that we should do is teaching people how to read a damn research study. Because
yes,
these folks pulling up
yes,
research studies on the internet and reading the hypothesis and thinking they've gotten a
that is
positive
not, no,
confirmation.
no,
Okay.
danger, Will Robinson, danger.
It's
In
like,
pharmacy,
ma'am, that study has a sample size of 5 from the
12.
same neighborhood.
No,
Yeah, I'm thinking that's
no,
not like an adequate.
that is not a real study. That is
Anyway,
an
sorry,
excellent
sidebar.
point. We should add that to the list. Like maybe an extra bonus. If we ever start a Patreon, that should be number one. Heather and Larbeth teach you how to read a study. That talk's not for everybody. Some people are going to be like, no, thank you. That is too many words. I actually this if this doesn't tell you how much I like to punish myself and what an ADHD nerd that I am. One of one of my electives in pharmacy school was statistics and pharmaceutical research. And that's all we did the whole semester. I had a fantastic professor who's still teaching, Dr. Johnson, who I don't know if she'll ever listen to this, bless her heart if she does, but we went through study by study and you had to pick it apart. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's one of the best classes I ever had because it taught me to think so critically and really just be able to look at something and go, that is not valid. I don't care what the hypothesis or the conclusion tell you and what some senator read, that is not valid. That is not statistically significant.
Yeah. Yeah. Research statistics. That's the most fun I ever had in a math class.
It is fun,
Um,
right? So much.
I,
The only kind of math I liked either.
and I'm not really a math girly. So like
Mm-mm.
but I loved
No.
looking at these studies
Yeah.
and figuring it out. And because,
Yeah.
the devil is always in the details and the little numbers. And a lot of times you can actually come to a different
Mm-hmm.
sort of conclusion if you
Mm-hmm.
actually run the numbers yourself. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
so
That's our sidebar. We'll do that someday. We'll pick a
nerds.
study and break it apart. That's why I believe in hormones for women, but we'll talk about that later. And I've been believing in it for 20 years.
The
Long
list of topics is
25
getting
years.
longer.
Long before I was postmenopausal, okay? I was believing in hormones when I was, anyway, they lied to you people, okay? I'm just going to tell y'all that. All you boomers, I'm so sorry that they lied to you when the Women's Health Initiative study came out. That's totally different. We'll talk about that next. Anyway, all right. So flaws in the system. There's so many. There's so many flaws in our system. I had to edit the flaws. Okay, that's how many there were. Now I really did have to focus on like what I felt like were the biggest core issues. First one is cost and
Mm-hmm.
price. That is a huge issue. So in America, medications are significantly more expensive for us than they are anywhere else in the world. I'm not going to repeat it, but it bears repeating. So let me give you an example. Eliquis is a very popular blood thinning medication, has saved so many lives. Couldn't begin to guess how many. Cost is around, to dispense, is around $600 a month, okay, for an American. In Canada, it costs you $94.
Mm-hmm.
$94. So when
So let's
patients
talk
tell,
about
yeah,
thalidomide.
oh, go ahead,
So
Fran.
thalidomide in the United States, $1,400 a pill. Mexico City, 5 cents.
Tell the lovely contestants of the American healthcare system what they've won when you tell them what thalidomide is and what it does. They don't know
You've
what that is.
won. You've won jack shit.
Why?
We'll send you a T-shirt.
Why do you need? Why would someone be taking thalidomide though? Give them a real world example. Why is it important?
Multiple
Why does that
myeloma.
matter?
Multiple myeloma. It's actually we use it in a lot of different kinds of cancers, sometimes different levels of things. Particularly multiple myeloma. That's the use I'm most familiar with because I was raised at the University of Arkansas with the Myeloma Institute.
Go Hogs.
Um, so yeah, whoop, big sweet. And so that we used a lot of thalidomide,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually had a patient who would bring extraneous supplies of said thalidomide, and
Yep.
there would be some dealing going on in the living
Listen,
room because
see
you
nothing,
know
hear nothing, say nothing.
right. I was just like, I ain't gonna pretend I didn't see nothing
I
because
would do
and
it. I mean, I
yeah,
don't know that I would like deal it, but if it's
yeah,
5 cents a pill in Mexico, I might need to
5 cents a pill.
take a
Yeah,
vacation there.
yeah, crazy, crazy. I was
That's
just like,
insane.
what?
So y'all see the disparity and the discrepancy here of pricing is astounding,
Mhm.
astounding. Um, so lack of government regulation and to price regulation is part of what leads to these costs. And then out of pocket costs for drugs, they vary depending on where you live, what kind of insurance you've got, what do you do for a living? Like it's crazy. There's no across the board. I have patients, I field phone calls every day, multiple. Can you tell me my doctor wants me to have this? Can you tell me how much it's going to be on my insurance? No, I cannot. And they really think like, what do you mean? And it's so hard to explain. So let's do it real quick. I can't tell you what your copay is going to be because your insurance company sets that. And
Mhm.
even if you have the same insurance as me, you don't have the same insurance as me.
Nope.
Because even for the employer that I work for, we have three different tiers. So I don't know what tier you're on. And bless your heart, if you know what tier you're on, you probably know how to call them and ask what the copay is going to be. Most patients don't even know that there's multiple tiers at the place that they work at. And even if you and I both have, let's say, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arkansas, if I'm employed by company A and you're employed by company B, we have different plans through Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield. They are not the same. And that all goes back to employers and being allowed to pick plans. And I get that. I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, but you've got to understand the system is so complicated. There is absolutely no way somebody can tell you right off the top of your head, what's my copay going to be? Like, we just don't know. I can see what it was last month. I can look
Yeah.
at what it was a year ago. Like I can go back and see the past, but I cannot see what's coming for you next. That's impossible. And so those price disparities are a big, big problem. And I think we're going to talk in a minute about what the effects of that are. But okay, so you've got a really expensive drug you need, you want it, maybe it's going to save your life, and you go to the pharmacy to pick it up. And have you ever had them tell you, oh, I'm sorry, but your insurance is requiring a prior authorization on that? And patients inevitably will say, what do you mean? My doctor wrote it. They want me to have it. Why does my insurance need a prior authorization?
Hmm.
Well, this is my jam right here. So uh, that's because your insurance is controlled, or this portion of your insurance is controlled by companies who are called PBMs, which are pharmacy benefit managers. So that is a term, if you do not know it, again, PBM, pharmacy benefit manager. You need to know it. You need to understand it. You need to be able to identify it from 50 paces, because these guys are in charge of just pretty much the world at this point. And we've allowed it to happen as American people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were very complacent, and we didn't understand, and it was complicated. And so we allowed it to happen. And now they run the world, along with some other big guys. So who are these folks? Well, they're the middlemen between you and your actual insurance company. So if you have Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I submit an insurance for an antibiotic, Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield doesn't get that electronic claim right then. It goes through someone in the middle, the middleman, your pharmacy benefits manager. They decide what's covered, what you're going to pay, all of the middle things, all the good information you always want that I can't tell you. That's who's deciding it. And people that fall in that category, they're going to sound a little bit familiar, because it's going to be folks like Express Scripts, CVS Caremark, Optum Health, which is owned by United Health. Don't be fooled by the names. So you need to get real familiar with who they are, what they sound like, what they do. And also, this podcast is probably going to keep me from ever getting jobs in these areas. I thought about that. As I was writing this up, I was like, yeah, I'm never going to get to work anywhere. But I feel like the information is more important, and you don't take it with you when you go. So what do PBMs do? So PBMs decide on your formulary. That's your list of covered drugs from your insurance company. You need to understand that it's like being on the honor roll. A formulary is like being on the honor roll, right? You got to be special to be on there. However, unlike when you were a student and worked for it, um, formularies are determined by PBMs, who do not always disclose how they decide who gets on that formulary or who does not, which means a space on that list could occur based on the profitability of a drug for the company, not the manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So PBMs are not transparent about how they make their money. If they ever say different, they are lying to you. That's the part that will never get me hired. I'm going to say it again. If
Yeah, I have been in interviews with insurance companies, and it's like
uh-huh.
I know the minute that I lost the job.
Ah, that happened. That happened to me recently.
I was like,
I wasn't
"Oh,
really
look,
looking for a
there
new
it
job, but
goes." I said,
yep,
I said I was going to help people. Holy
out
shit,
the
kid!
window. Metrics are not important. No, metrics are important. It's just oftentimes corporate metrics are not important to healthcare professionals.
Right.
That's a different thing than metrics. Anyway, yeah, that happened to me kind of recently. Like, I wasn't really looking for a new job, but an opportunity came up. I thought, man, that would really be a great fit. And just sidebar. And sat through, we won't go into any of the details, sat through and like, oh, you're going to hear back in whatever time frame. And so I didn't hear anything. And so I followed up, because that's what you do as an adult. And got this really nice email from this very nice person, that sounded very much like a, yeah, you're not for us. You're not for us. And it didn't, it honest to goodness did not occur to me until like the next day. I was like, shit, they Googled me. guarantee they found that I have a podcast called Shit You Don't Know, and they don't think that's professional in pharmacy. I guarantee that's what happened. And then I was like, you know what? It's probably for the best because I'm not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. And
Same.
I'm not going to be a part of a team where I just sit there and listen and maybe don't push back if I think something's wrong. So it's probably best that if I have some little podcast where I talk about things in healthcare that are disturbing and you feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's going to step on toes, then I'm probably not your flavor anyway. And
Right.
that's
And
okay.
that's where I found myself in long-term
Mm,
care. You
yeah.
know, sitting on the other sides of those Zoom calls going, "Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is not for me.
Can't do it.
This is not for
Can't
me."
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I've made my peace with it and kind of have moved into the space of I went into healthcare because I wanted to help people, which has turned into advocacy. I didn't know advocacy wasn't a word 20 plus years ago, but now that's what it means. When you go in there to take care of patients and help them, you're an advocate, period.
Mm-hmm.
That end of story. So that's what I do, and that's who I am. And I'm not changing that anymore. It's not that I can't change, I won't change that. Patients are always going to be the most important thing. And when they stop being that for people, then I'm not for you.
Right.
I mean, it's that simple. It's that simple. I may have to raise chickens and goats before it's over, but I will never stop.
Well,
I mean, listen, eggs are so expensive, I might need to, but like, I'm never going to stop doing what I think is best for patients. And if that disqualifies me from being a part of a certain team, then I don't need to be on that team because we're not pulling the same wagon. Anyway, off the soapbox. So yeah, what do PBMs do? They don't tell you anything. That's what
they
PBMs.
fuck your life up. That's what they do.
Yes, they can. They
Sorry.
can. Let's give some examples. Here we go. So PBMs make their money a lot of different ways. What they're going to tell you and what you're going to hear in the media that this is how they work. They're going to say, oh, we're trying. Look, we tell you everything. This is how we make our money. Um, you know, some big corporation. I don't want to say one. I'm trying to think. Corporation A. Okay, so Corporation A pays us, you know, PBMA to administer or oversee your pharmacy benefits every month. That's how we get paid. That is true. That is part of how they get paid. And I think that's what people really, you need to fundamentally understand. They are not on your side. If they say they are not on your side. Let me tell you whose side they are on. Shareholders. Shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
PBMs are corporations that are for profit and they answer to shareholders. So everything they do, every decision they make will be based on how to make their shareholders happy and increase their own bonuses. And this is how they do it. So part of their income does come from being paid by your employer, as it should. They are doing a job, they should get paid. But here's what they don't tell you. They get rebates from manufacturers to keep their drugs on a formulary. They get those rebates to keep a cost affordable enough to stay on a formulary. They are not obligated. That means if drug company Smith makes a fantastic drug that costs $2,000 a month and nobody wants to cover it on insurance, they can decide to offer a rebate directly back to PBMA to maintain their place on a formulary or get on the formulary so that it really only costs that formulary $1,000. Well, would you like to know where the other $1,000 of that rebate goes? So would we. So would we. Not to you. Ideally, the rebate would go back to your employer who could then use it to further reduce your healthcare costs in many ways. That is not what necessarily happens. They may not give any of it. They may give some of it. Nobody really knows because they don't have to tell us. There are no laws for it. We'll get to that later. So that's another way That's one of the ways that they make their money is they maintain their status on a formulary by getting these rebates back. Their profits are going to be based on, or excuse me, their formularies are going to be based on profit rather than necessarily patient need. So that's a problem. Also, at the end of this in the show notes, I'm going to have all sorts of little references that you can click on at home so that you don't know I'm just pulling this stuff from the air. Like there are actual studies of all of these things, any of the data that I mentioned, any of the things that I explain. I have footnotes. Heather has footnotes. But those footnotes will become resources and references for you, and they will be in the show notes so that you can access and read it for yourself because I am transparent. Anyway, middlemen. So yeah, one of the things is rebate sharing. Another thing is administrative fees is what they call it. But administration fees are really what they charge to process your claim. In other words, to pass it through the whole ring of electronic systems, digital ether to get to get it where it needs to go. There's these administrative fees that have to be paid to them, and that can cost anywhere from $1.25 to $3.50 per prescription. They will also make the pharmacy pay those fees. I know because I used to own a pharmacy and I got a little bill every month that they auto drafted and they charged me like 20 cents per claim.
Why? That's what I
Because
don't
they
even
can.
understand. Like,
Because they
why?
can.
Because I don't
We're gonna
understand.
get to that. You're gonna you're gonna have a lot of whys. I'm just gonna tell you, and we'll get to why in a minute. All right. So there's such a thing as pharmacy spread. I'm like, okay, what is that? Pharmacy
Is that like the
spread.
NFL? Like this is that like to
I
cover the
don't even know
spread?
what that means. I know there's a spread and it involves betting. I don't know how it works at all. At all. At all. I know it's a term. And probably just because I've watched a lot of True Crime. Found it on there. When people are gamblers and they get in trouble and they get killed. So, a pharmacy spread is where your PBM company actually bills your health plan. Okay. So, not even your employer, although eventually that's going to trickle back to them. They bill your health plan for a higher amount than they are reimbursing the pharmacy.
Isn't that fun?
Huh? It's
It's a
called a
fun
pharmacy
little.
spread. So, let's do some math. If if a drug costs if a drug is going to be sold for $30, your copay is $30, right? Um, and you pay $30, but maybe the other back end of it is 100. Hope we're going to get this math correct. Because here's the thing too, they don't make it super obvious for pharmacies. Like you have to really sit and figure out like this isn't right, and you have to have people who are willing to be whistleblowers. That's how we found out that all of this not me personally, but that's how this information has been disseminated because there's been whistleblowers that have come out of working for PBMs like this is wrong. Like we can't keep allowing this to happen. Yet it's still happening. So they upcharge the health plan. So for instance, they can tell the health plan they paid the pharmacy $130. They can say, well, the copay was 30, so the pharmacy got the copay, and we paid $100 to the pharmacy. But they may not have actually paid the pharmacy $100. They may have only paid them 70 or 50, and they don't have to disclose that. So that's called the spread. That's nice.
So
They have
it's
something called
it's equally problematic, is what you're saying, as the NFL spread.
oh,
It's just
I
equally
guess so.
problematic.
Possibly. Don't know how that works on the NFL. I'm so ignorant of football. It's embarrassing. For
That's me
somebody
too.
who grew up around it constantly, I know so little. Like
Uh,
I could tell you in like 30, I'm not going to, but I could tell you in like 30 seconds to a minute what I know about football.
yeah, I'm married to a sports reporter. I know
Well,
Zero.
I mean, I'm married to a dude who loves football. He just has not never tried to, like, not that that's his fault, but he's like trying to spare me. I'm sure. But I mean, I grew up around it, but nobody bothered to explain it to me. I guess because I was a girl, and they were like, "You have to sit and watch it because there's only one TV, but we're not going to tell you about it." So it was just whatever I could figure out.
Right.
Anyway, so yes, it is problematic. That is a word for it. And that's probably a whole episode too. But anyway, so then there's what they call DIR fees. So I just love the fees, administrative fees, pharmacy fees, and DIR fees. So DIR fees are direct and indirect remuneration fees. Um, and they're given to pharmacies. And what happens is if you have a $30 copay and the pharmacy thinks, oh, at least we got that, it's not $30 over our cost. Don't be fooled. That's rarely happening in a real pharmacy is a $30 profit. But let's say they've got your $30 copay and the reimbursement of 70. So it was going to be 100. They're going to get reimbursed $100 for something that they paid, let's say 94. And that's not going to include their transmission fees. That's not going to include that's none of their other cost of goods sold. Okay. Um, Later, an insurance company can come back and say, oh man, we didn't mean to pay you that much. So we're going to take some of that back. It's called a clawback.
So, like,
Mm-hmm.
man,
They'll just
these
take
poor
it out of your
little
account.
independent pharmacies don't have a chance, do they?
This
I
is
mean,
exactly, yes, yes. And I'm so glad you said it because I know people probably think that I'm biased because I owned one for 9 years. But please say it louder for the crowd.
yeah, I mean, like, how uh, none of this makes any sense at all. And
It gets
I mean,
better.
even down from where the manufacturers like price the drug, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's so weird. It's just so weird.
Yeah.
Like, how and I think that that's the thing that, like, I was listening to John Stewart. John Stewart.
Oh.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
love John Stewart.
Yeah.
Seriously have a fangirl crush on him. Like, I just,
Well,
love
we
the
got
way
to
he
keep
just,
working because at some point we're going to get invited places, and why
yeah,
not Jon Stewart show?
maybe. But
I would not say no.
he was talking about this very thing and about how it costs us so much money in this country to get drugs, and
Yes.
that the sad part about it is that when we have, like, what makes this whole situation about the NIH closing and all, or them, cutting all the funds, is that the NIH is how we pay for drug development in this country. And so it's like,
Yes.
we're paying for drug development out of our tax dollars.
Yes.
And this is a good thing because we do have cutting edge access to lots of things in this
Mm-hmm.
country that, you
Mm-hmm.
know, maybe they don't have other places.
Yes.
But the
Correct.
bad part about that is then when they're patent protected for so long, they just price gouge the crap out of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And also, while they're doing that, screw all the pharmacies in the
Yes.
process.
Yes.
And so it makes it so, like, you can't have these small independent pharmacies because those pharmacies are losing money hand over fist because of the way the
Yes.
PBMs are just
Yes.
raking you over the coals.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So it's crazy. And then when you add that level of frustration on the consumer side of things,
Mm-hmm.
because I know for me, even though, like, my insurance plan is one of those self-funded, like, hospital plans, right?
Right.
And we have a program at my job that is basically they pay for your meds, but you have to use their pharmacy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is cool, except for when the
It's
pharmacy is
helpful.
having
It's
is it
helpful. Right.
except for when the pharmacy is having issues, and that's the only pharmacy you can use.
Yeah. It happens.
So, it's nothing is without its, and I have no coverage in any other pharmacies outside our system.
Say again.
I have no coverage in any pharmacies outside our system.
So, what do you do if you travel and like you have to go to the emergency room? You have to pay out of pocket?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, For that kind of thing, yeah, I believe there's emergency coverage, but like for
Okay.
like pharmacy type stuff,
It's that
I
or
think
nothing.
I don't know how
So if
I
you
don't
have a
know how that
shortage,
would work.
that's a real problem.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. It does make covering your emergency bases a little bit more difficult when you're
Yeah.
trying to like,
Yeah.
mitigate disaster.
Well, you can't. How
It's
could you possibly mitigate when there's no alternatives?
right. So, even in the systems where it sounds, real good, like, oh
Right.
yeah, that's a really great benefit, there's always going to be a downside to that. And like for us,
Sure.
I live an hour and a half away from where I work.
Hmm.
So I really depend on, the pharmacy having their shit together
Yeah. Yeah.
so that we can, I can pick up medications when I'm working and we don't
Right.
have special trips.
Right. And for anybody at home who's like, well, you're the one who chooses to live an hour and a half from your job, let me just insert this here. Um, how much do you think the pay differential is if she needs to drive that far in order to make a living to support her family? So, healthcare pay, the disparity for that is a different topic. But before you come out and go, well, she's working it out, I have known women who have driven 2 hours one way, lived away from their family for their shifts, shared an apartment. Knew two nurses that did that one time.
Hmm.
Lived here where I live in South Arkansas, drove all the way to UAMS, worked there 3 or 4 days, and they shared an apartment. They still made more money driving 2 hours from where we live to work for the university.
Hey,
Talk
I know
to,
those nurses. I worked with
I
them.
know you do. Don't don't bust HIPAA because they're my
I won't
patients too.
tell
Uh, so like I was always in such awe of them because that is a huge sacrifice to be gone, like work 312s, 412s, whatever, and then home and then like because you know how nurses shifts work. And they were still coming out ahead renting an apartment in Little Rock and work because they made so much more money working at UAMS. And it's not because UAMS is overpaying them. Before
I was
anybody
going to
says
say,
that, it's
yeah,
because
what is that state of affairs? Because, like, when
it's
I
because
made the move
yeah,
from UAMS going to hospice in Texas, it was a
right.
$30,000 a year pay raise.
Exactly. It's because corporations run healthcare in America. But anyway,
Yeah,
all right.
we
So
digress.
uh, we digress. We digress. I just wanted to throw that out there before I got a nasty little comment on the intranet, as some people like to do. Anyway, um, so the last thing is that the deck is stacked against is because PBMs own their own pharmacy. So this is a fun topic for me. This is my most favorite topic to talk about, probably because I did own a pharmacy at one time. And so years ago, and I remember when this happened, CVS or Caremark at the time, Caremark said, "Hey, we want to get into the pharmacy business in a different way. We want to own our own pharmacy." So they approached CVS and offered to buy them and wanted to do this major merger. And there was a huge hullabaloo in Washington about it at the time because it was going to create a monopoly. And they went on and on and on about how that wasn't going to happen, and they had to go before the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, because you cannot combine businesses to create a monopoly in the United States of America. You're not supposed to be able to. Let me please hear me when I say this. That's exactly what happened. And everybody at the time that was a pharmacist was like, this is bad. This is very, very bad. And not just because I own an independent pharmacy. This is very bad because they're known for not keeping their word. They're known for putting stumbling blocks in front of patients. This is going to get real, real bad. And guess what? It's real, real bad because you have Caremark owning CVS, you have United Health owning Optum Health, and then you have Express Scripts, who just has their own self that they came up with. I don't even know. They've absorbed some, excuse me, they've absorbed some pharmacies, but there was not, I can't remember if there was a huge major merger. I know they bought out a bunch of grocery store chains at one time, but it was not anything like Caremark buying CVS. Okay, that was, and what has happened is all of these companies have created enormous mail order pharmacies and they force you to go to mail order. Now, there are some companies, there are some employers. When I say companies, I mean employers. There are some employers who will allow you to opt out of your mail order plan. Learn that term, opt out. Ask if you don't like mail order and you work for company A and you're getting told you got to go mail order. And trust me, at the pharmacy, when we submit your claim, you can get it filled maybe once or twice at a local place. And then we get a rejection that says must use mail order. It's not going to tell us you can opt out. You have to be proactive at that moment and call your company and say, can I opt out of mail order? Sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. You have to call and find that out. If you cannot opt out of mail order, just a side note in an emergency situation, if you didn't know this was a thing for your company, if you go to pick your prescription up and it is not something you can just afford to pay cash out of pocket, if it's not on the $4, $6, $12, whatever list, call your insurance company right then and say, I am out of medicine. I don't want to have a stroke. I don't want to have a heart attack, whatever your medicine is for. I need an emergency supply until I can get mail order set up. They cannot deny you that, but you have to request it and you have to use the right terminology or they're going to make you pay out of pocket. Don't do it. Stick to your guns. You're paying for this insurance. You're paying for this company to make them do their job for you. Make them. So they own their own pharmacies. They push you to mail order. They push you to their pharmacies. Or now in the case of Caremark owning CVS, if they can't get you to get it mail order, they'll push you to a CVS. So I live 35 minutes from the closest CVS pharmacy. When I worked in another town 30 minutes away, had patients that lived an hour and 5 minutes from a CVS pharmacy. They either had to get it mail order or they had to drive an hour and 5 minutes to pick their medicine up. That's a pharmacy desert, artificially created, because
Yeah.
there were dozens, probably a dozen that they could use. So PBMs do this, and you're like, well, okay, well, they own a pharmacy. They still have to pay for the drug. Okay, let me explain how that works. They purchase for their entire system. So they're purchasing a drug at a far deeper discount than any independent pharmacy could ever purchase it. So that bottle of lisinopril, that's 1,000 count, they're going to get it cheaper than anybody out there, right? Because they're negotiating for their whole system. Then they're going to take that 1,000 count bottle to one of their facilities and they're going to repackage it into a bottle of 100 or into a bottle of 30. They're going to get their own NDC number for it. They're going to assign their own cost for it. And they're going to submit that for payment to themselves from your employer and insurer. And they're going to get paid whatever they want to get paid for that drug. And they don't have to disclose anything they did within that circle. With an independent pharmacy or a major chain like Walmart or Walgreens submits a claim to your company, they have to tell them almost exactly what they paid for the drug, to the penny. And then they get audited and they have to give their invoices over and they have to prove that's what they paid. This happens regularly. It's how it's always happened. Guess who doesn't have to do that?
The PBM.
The PBM. They do not have to be transparent. They do not have to audit themselves. They do not have to disclose any source of their income. They have to disclose their total income, obviously, because they pay taxes and they have shareholders, but they don't have to tell you how they got it. There is very little transparency there. So your big problem in healthcare for prescriptions is you've got this guy in the middle who's jerking the chain both ways and nobody can stop them. There's no legislation stopping them. There's no laws. There's nothing. It is the Wild West with PBMs. They created the system to be that way. Their lobbyists are huge. They pour millions and millions of dollars into lobbying to keep it that way. Because the real simple solution is, well, just legislate them. Why aren't they legislated? Why isn't the insurance commission overseeing them? Because no one's ever been able to pass any legislation that had any teeth to it to do it. Arkansas has tried multiple times. The only thing that ever came out of any of it was we don't have any mail order pharmacies in Arkansas. So Arkansas came forth and said, okay, well, if you're going to force mandatory mail order, we're going to make it illegal to have a mail order pharmacy in Arkansas. Well, guess what they did? They just moved them all to Texas, to Dallas, and they ship them out of a hub. It's not hard. It's not hard. they have people that sit around all day long to help them think of ways to get around it. So that's a big, huge portion of the problem in affording prescription drugs. There you go. How's that? So you have Express Scripts, you have CVS Caremark, and you have Optum United Health. They control 85% of the market, the pharmacy market, prescription drug market. Now, if that's not a monopoly, I mean, what's your definition of it?
It's color me flabbergasted.
Here's a number for you. Their revenue, $315 billion.
So I know we've kind of talked about this before, and I don't know if this is an appropriate point for like a segue.
It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
So we talked about like Mark Cuban's program.
Yes.
With Cost Plus. And so like
very interesting model.
For me, I went on there and I looked like right now I'm getting my methotrexate. I have rheumatoid arthritis. So I'm on methotrexate, I'm on Plaquenil. And I, because of other situations that have been going on, I've been, comparing insurances and trying to look at different things. And I know for me, like if I'm considering a job change and this particular insurance company doesn't have a pharmacy benefit like the one we have,
right,
or I'm going to have to be going to the pharmacy to pick up drugs. So my methotrexate at the local pharmacy would be $25 for a 1 month supply. With the tier 1 insurance, my methotrexate for a 90-day supply through Cost Plus is like $17. So how do programs like that, like, both help and damage the market?
So that's a great question. So it helps in that we're increasing access to patients, which is a great goal, and definitely something we both support. And it hurts in that we're still not assigning value to what the pharmacy is and does. So one of the things that happened years ago when the $4 list came out, that we all said, like, hey, you're really, like, we get you're trying to make drugs affordable, we get you're trying to get people in your stores, but you are cheapening what pharmacists do. You're making it look like what we do doesn't have value because you are assigning and saying the pharmacist is attached to a $4 drug. That's a big problem because we're not, quite frankly. And for $4, your life is worth more than that. So ultimately, you're going to look at that system though and go, well, but the patient's the most important thing. So even if the pharmacist, like, even if they're not paid for their time, and even if it's valuable, the patient's the most important thing. I get that. But everybody has the right to make a living based on the value they provide to patients or their community or whatever, whether you're the pharmacist or the person that's, emptying the trash.
Or just in terms of the cost of your education.
Yes, which I'm still paying for.
Yeah, that's
my favorite bill.
Even
yeah.
When you think about, like, we were having an interesting discussion about the H-1B visa program and how cuts to that are going to, like, significantly hurt healthcare. And people are like, well, it's just going to encourage, more doctors from the United States or people from the United States to go into medicine. And I said,
no, it's not.
Well, explain to me then who's going to pay for that? Because, you know what I mean? Like, the support that we get from other countries, is a lot in the healthcare space, especially in acute care. And even the nursing support that you get a lot of times at the bedside is from people who are H-1B visa holders. And just, and the cost of educating a physician and a pharmacist in this country is what, $200,000
Um, it when I got out of school, I owed $150,000, and that was 21 years ago.
And you probably
And
own 400,000 now.
I don't, you know, I got a little lost in that when all that, like when everything was going down, because I was like, what do you mean your loans? I had to go educate myself how student loans had changed. Mine were fixed, like when I graduated, consolidated. So no, I did not fall into that. Like I'm actually paying mine off because when I found out what was really going on after I graduated, I was like, holy crap. Um, but the most recent grads in the last 3 to 5 years who have come into the market have shared with me that they owe over $250,000 for pharmacy school. And
Wow.
then they go into these pharmacies to work and they are treated like cattle. They're checking 600 prescriptions a day. They're counseling patients. They're giving vaccinations. They're seeing patients. In some instances. Hold on, we have a pug that's disgruntled. They're being clinicians in some
Crazy.
places, crazy, in that they're actually, seeing them, testing them, treating them, etc. And then they're working sometimes at 24-hour pharmacies, and they don't have a cashier. Like it's wild. The works. It's like 30-minute lunches for 12-hour shifts, no break. It's nuts. It's insane. People don't understand that, but pharmacists are not protected by the same employment protections that other people are. Neither are physicians, and neither are lawyers. So they are not obligated to give us a lunch break. They are not obligated to give us a break. Um, they could work us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if they wanted to. So there's a really high cost to education, but you don't want to pay the person anything and you want to treat them terribly. And then you wonder why you don't, like, none of my children would ever be a pharmacist, ever. They've known that and been able to, they would have told you that from the time they were 8 years old because they saw what I went through as a pharmacist, even when
Mm-hmm.
I owned my own business and I was on call 24 hours a day. It just, you have to make it. Drugs are more than just putting pills in a bottle. And I applaud Mr. Cuban for saying, like, there's a problem here and we need to do something about it. And he's doing something about it. He's doing what he thinks is best. And so I respect that. But I don't think it addresses the root problem, which is what's going on at the PBM level, what's going on at the drug development and cost level, which we're going to talk about in a second. None of that's really being, so we're not, we're like sort of trimming the branches on the tree, but we are not really getting to the root of the problem.
Right. We're not
And
fixing anything. We're just
we're not
shuffling it.
fixing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as Americans, that's a lot of our problem overall is we want to just like, okay, well, let's fix what this problem is right here. Well, that's, like putting your finger in the hull of the boat when the whole GD thing is sinking, and it's like, well, there's 1,000 holes or whatever, like let's fix what the real problem is that we need to go to dry dock, and actually overhaul this thing instead of trying to patch things. And I think he's in a powerful space to do that too. Like he could do both. He could have this company and still say that PBMs need to be accountable. He could still say pharmacists are a great asset to our country and should be being utilized as healthcare professionals in a different way, in a better way, in a more cost-effective way, because we are the most expensive thing back there is what they have to pay us. Um, but we're worth every penny, you know?
I
We're
agree.
worth
I
every
mean,
penny. And before somebody says, well, that's ridiculous. I Googled how much pharmacists make and you shouldn't make that much. Well, let me tell you, if we prevent one med error that keeps somebody out of the ICU or keeps them from dying and keeps your physician or your hospital from being sued because we've caught it, we've paid for ourselves. That's just one patient. And we do it
right.
all day long, every single day. We do it so much and we don't talk about it, people don't know about it.
Right.
And I think, that might be something that would be interesting is to start, you know, jotting down some information that doesn't violate HIPAA where we start saying this is what we did to you too as a nurse. People have no idea. They think you just change a bedpan or start an IV. They don't know that you walked in and noticed that your patient was about to crash because the physician that walked in before was busy Googling something. I said it, not her. because they don't know all the physical assessment things they should know yet. It happens.
Well, or even just experience. I mean,
It, that's what I
you
mean.
get you get such a feeling. I mean, this happened not even 4 weeks ago. I walked into a patient's room and I was getting a report, and I was just like, "Oh, uh, have they been looking like this all day?" You know? And it's like,
Have they been like this all day? Oh gosh.
right, it's a little, it's the subtle things that, as a new graduate nurse, I would not have
Yeah.
noticed.
Yeah.
But
But that's
now,
why that's why you make more money than a new
mhm,
graduate, or you should.
right.
That doesn't always happen that way depending on the market, but experience is important.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
incredibly important.
it is important. And what you bring to the table is incredibly important. I mean, and the same thing in the pharmacy space. Like, having a good pharmacist is really going to help you in the long run. Even like for me, um, when I went and picked up my husband's medication the other day, I asked him, I was like, man, I'm really having trouble with this Plaquenil. Like, what can I do
Mm-hmm.
to, like, because I'm just having a lot of GI and the headaches and everything.
Right.
And he was able to give me a list of things that he's just like, try this, try this, try this, try
Mm-hmm.
this.
Oh
And
yeah.
and one of those things worked. So I was like, okay, good. So now I'm not facing,
Imagine that.
having to stop taking a drug that I do think is helping, you
Right.
know, um, because the
Yeah.
pharmacist was able to like give me a way to mitigate those not so nice side effects. So
Well, and that's
definitely,
what we want to do. That's what
yeah,
we're there to do. We want, I know it sounds corny, but I always tell people like my job is to make sure that you live a better, healthier life. It sounds like a commercial. I know. I'm sorry, but I don't know how else to say it. Like that's my goal when I get up every day and go to be a pharmacist is I want you to live a better, healthier life from now until the end.
yeah,
We can do a lot of things. You and I've talked about morbidity versus mortality. We can do a lot of things to extend your life. Listen, I may not be interested in extending your life. It'd be great if we could, but if I can't get you a better quality of life from now till then, I don't. I, that's what I feel like my job really is,
hmm,
and that's the center of which I function for
right,
patients. You know, so I'm going to tell them the truth when they ask me, "Do you think this is going to help me?" Oh no, I don't think it is. Not like you want it to, and here's why I don't think it will.
yeah,
Or, yeah, I've seen this help so many people, but here's what you're going to need to do because there's some brutal side effects, you know? Um, but yeah, so I think Mark's got a good idea. I think I will say this. I have seen many independent pharmacies do very similar things in their pricing. They just don't have the media machine behind them that he does to push the volume that he's getting in order to make it financially viable.
hmm,
Does that make
right,
sense? There's not an independent pharmacist. I would not, I can't imagine there would be one that doesn't in their own mind have a pricing structure. I did. Everybody I've ever talked to does. If it's a generic, X number of dollars over, brand name, X number of dollars over, sometimes they'll price match, sometimes they won't. But if they own that pharmacy and they got boots on the ground, they can probably tell you what their cost to dispense is per prescription. And they know what they got to have, the law of averages, and they're going to do their very best to get you what they can at the price they can get it to you at and still pay their people and take care of their family. The problem comes in they can't buy in the volume that somebody like Mark Cuban can, or
right.
Walmart or Target or CVS or whoever else. They just can't. And there's also laws preventing, here's another little thing. There's laws preventing independent pharmacies from joining together to,
Yeah, so that was my next question. Can you
Mhm.
not like do collective bargaining through
No,
some sort of third party group?
nope, nope, not in the way that they can. There are some buying groups out there. There are some contracting groups out there. Contracting groups, it's not in the same way that like CVS contracts when their patients are going to go to Walmart. That's not how, it is not the same at all. Contracting groups are they help a little, but it's primarily just to make sure that you can get your claims to go through, that you have the right software. It's kind of that, you know. And so they just do not have the power and the teeth. And some people would say, well, that's just a competitive market. But I would point you back to, if you have three companies that control 85% of the market, that's not competitive. That's not a competitive market, you
Right.
know. That's not a
Not.
competitive market. That's a monopolized market. And that's part of why your costs are up. So I think Mark has a really great idea, and I think a lot more could be done with it. And I think that there could still be a lot of good advocacy come out of that for reform and change, so that it's cheaper for everybody across the board, because that's what we really need. Yeah. So last thing we're going to tackle is, why do drugs cost so much? Well, we've talked about, you've got these PBMs in the middle that are kind of, they can inflate prices and things like that. But the real thing that you're going to hear most in the media, I mean, we're just having a fit down here with the snorting and I just hate to put them in their box. They have a little kennel and they just pout and they look so pitiful. They know I'm up here. Anyway, so what you're almost always going to see in here is drug companies say, well, we've got to get this drug to market, and the costs associated with that are so expensive, and we really need to be able to recoup our costs. We got to recoup our costs. That's the statement
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to hear. Anyway, and I don't disagree with that. I feel like if you have an investment in something, you should be able to recoup your investment. I think the problem is the spread is so wide, and patients don't know that. If they did, they'd be a lot madder about it. So we talked about Eliquis earlier, and so I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to use that as another example. So Eliquis came to market in 2012, which I didn't realize it had been that long, but it has been. So it came to market in 2012, and the average cost to bring a drug to market, including failures, that's important to note, is $515 million. It's a lot of money. So in that number, we've got we want to make this drug. We started the trials, and then we figured out it wasn't safe. So we had to scrap it. So that's a failure, right? Well, that's still, whoever the drug company is, that's still on their books that they had that failure. So they want other drugs to cover that failure, because God forbid they have to just have a failure and write it off like the rest of us when we own a business. But so when we say 515 million, that includes any failures that have occurred that we're averaging in. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
since 2012, Eliquis has made 69 billion. Do you think they have recouped their investment?
Oh, leaps and bounds, leaps and bounds. And I think too that we
Yeah.
hear big numbers like 515 million, but let's just
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's just put that in the
Mm-hmm.
scope of 69 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I actually did that for you,
that
but
is
you go
an
ahead too.
incomprehensible amount of money.
It's
and
like,
and that's profit.
okay,
That's what we have to think about. That's
right,
profit. That's not, it's
right,
brought in 69
right,
billion. That's how much the drug has profited, right?
right. It's so much
That's a
money.
lot of
It's so much money.
yachts
So
in Lamborghini.
yeah,
It, yeah.
so yeah, it is a lot of yacht. I guess I don't know how much does a yacht cost. Listeners, viewers, anybody out there got a yacht? Throw that number in the comments, because Heather and I don't even have a rowboat. We don't know. We don't know. So yeah, that's like a 13,300% return on their investment, ROI. I mean,
Mhm.
if only. If only. So for every dollar spent developing the drug, they've made $134 in revenue. It
Yeah.
took, so I'm a nerd, y'all know that. So of course I had to look at this and be like, well, what else does that look like? Because that's 515 million and 69 billion. You might as well just tell me you drive a Tesla and I drive a Kia because I don't know the difference. That spread is so wide to me. I can't fathom what that really looks like in everyday life. So, um, if it took 10 years to develop the drug, if I don't know that it did, but if it took 10 years to develop the drug, that means the company earned its development costs within 3 days of the drug launching, and it's been out since 2012.
Mm-hmm. Well, and let's not forget that all those lovely NIH studies
Mm-hmm.
that take the cost of administrating the research,
Yes,
a
ma'am.
huge benefit to those particular
Mm-hmm.
companies
Mm-hmm.
to
At no
make
cost
sure.
to them.
So how are we returning on our investment if
We're not.
that's just the craziest thing to me? Because like even at the
Uh-huh.
university level, um, so most drugs get developed at the university level, bench
Uh-huh.
research from, research physicians, pharmacists, those kinds of things. That's where drug development happens. And most of the time it's the university who then says to the drug
Yeah.
company, "Hey, we have this
Yeah.
cool thing." And then the
Uh-huh.
drug company says, "Yes or no, we need that." And
Uh-huh.
then the drug company then writes the grant proposal to the NIH to get the
Uh-huh.
money, and then the
Uh-huh.
university contracts their research through the actual drug companies. So
Uh-huh.
it's is the mob running the pharmaceutical industry? I mean, because
I
it
don't know
feels
that it, I
like
don't know that it's much different if they're not. I mean, I don't I don't think that the actual mob is running it. No, but it certainly feels like they stole their plan or their game book. Is that a thing? A game book? Whatever.
right. It's like
Yeah.
legal
Yeah.
racketeering, it's
Yeah.
like
For sure.
everybody gets a slice of this pie
Uh-huh.
that it's
Yeah.
insane to me.
Well, and what people also don't know is that once a drug goes to market, we have things that are called post-marketing surveys, studies that are done. And the drug company does have to continue to follow a drug or product once it's on the market. And that's how you then later find out, oh, well, we're going to pull this drug because what we saw a little bit in the drug trials, but we didn't think it was statistically significant. All of a sudden it is, 5, 10 years down the road. Well, the NIH helps with all that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other government agencies as well. Like pharmacists have a hotline. We can call them report side effects, reactions, et cetera. Like we can turn all of that data in a and that's your tax dollars. But you're not getting a coupon when you need your Eliquis. I mean, you're not. They used to give out to manufacturer, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying like if we have contributed, if we as the American public have gone on to be their guinea pigs, which you are, let me be clear, because drug studies are usually inherently flawed a little bit, at
Mm-hmm.
least. That's that's a different topic. But when it gets to post marketing, you have become the study.
Yeah.
And you, the American public, are not getting any credit for that. You're not getting any rebates. You're not getting any bonuses. You are just continuing, you're paying it forward to a corporation, not the nation. Let's like separate those two things too. This is not like you're not going to World War II to pay it forward to keep us free from dictatorship and fascism. Like you're paying it forward so future generations know them whether Eliquis is safe or not. But you're not getting anything for that.
Right.
But you are risking something because
Right.
every drug or procedure has a risk. I think that's
Well, and
pretty.
even too, like I think it's important to point out in situations like this because a lot of people will bring up, oh, well, litigation costs for like drug lawsuits. Again, how much money? We have never paid out a study or enough money. I think that honestly, thalidomide is probably
Uh-huh.
the biggest
Uh-huh.
lawsuit that we've ever
Yes.
had, this collective lawsuit. And
Yes.
I think, and they will still say now that lawsuit took place in the 60s,
Yes.
70s. And
60s, I
so
believe. My
explain to
mother
me
was
why you've paid out all that money for thalidomide, even then you still made money for it, and you're still making money
they're
off
still
of it.
making money. The drug just
For
isn't used in other populations.
Yeah, it's just off of that other usage. And so that's just mind-blowing too, because you
Yeah.
can't, even with litigation costs, you can't say that that's a detriment to lowering the cost of prescription drugs, because they've made, like with Eliquis, they've made $69 billion. Like, is grandpa who bled to death on his Eliquis because going to recoup $69 billion
He's not gonna. Well,
in
I mean,
damages? They're going to throw a mill or two at his family, and they're going to all skip off to Happy Land and call it good. Like, and that's not even a drop in the bucket compared to
right, right.
how much it costs.
Litigation is definitely a topic we need to cover. Put that on your mental list. Medical litigation and malpractice is a topic we need to cover
Mm-hmm.
because there is a profound misunderstanding about what that looks like for the patient. And I'm not going to say any more than that because that's another soapbox of mine. But so another way to look at it is like, because I did own a business and I know what's associated with business costs. So if I had started a business or created a product that it cost me about $5,200 to start up. So small business apparently in today's times. Um, if we started with that amount of money and then within just a couple of years, let's say 2 to 3 years, I was making 690 million in profit. That's the money difference. See, 5,000 I can wrap my brain around, right?
Mm-hmm.
690 million is so much money I can't fathom it.
Right.
That's how much money Eliquis has made its manufacturer. And what happens is these drug companies bank on this American healthcare system that is set up, run by corporations on every single level to recoup all of this profit. So when they go pimp it out to other countries, they get a totally different deal. That's why you can go to Mexico and get thalidomide for 5 cents because they know
Mm-hmm.
Mexico's not going to let them import it for that. I mean, nobody could buy it. And quite frankly, the American public can't buy thalidomide for $1,400 a capsule, but
Right.
they're not having to. Their insurance is, except they're paying for their insurance, and their deductible is ridiculous. Let's be honest about that. Our premiums, our deductibles, our copays, it's all nonsense. The biggest Ponzi scheme ever perpetrated on the American public is our health insurance system.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'm like, yes. Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest Ponzi scheme I've ever seen. If my understanding of a Ponzi scheme is correct, which is that you're going to pay in and eventually get a benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's everybody pulls together and you're all going to pay in and like, but that's not what has happened.
No.
Because at the root of everything, the American healthcare system is propped up by shareholders that have to be pleased,
Yeah.
not patients that have to be served.
Right. Yeah. It's no, insurance is crazy. I mean, and I've been dealing with that, for some personal health issues that we've got going on in this house, and it makes you want to pull your hair out.
Yep, it
And
does. It
it's
does.
because it's like there's no sense of urgency. There's no sense
Because
of,
they don't care if you die. That's just
no,
one more person they don't have to pay for.
they don't have to pay for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're an
And
expensive one. That's the other thing.
yeah,
There's people who are listening who are like, well, but that doesn't make sense. Then nobody's paying a premium. Well, let me tell you something. If you cost your company something, they don't care if you die. They want to insure everybody that's not the 32-year-old that's not taking anything, that doesn't have rheumatoid, that doesn't have a husband that has health issues. Like that's who they want to cover. They don't want to cover middle-aged sick people or boomers.
no,
You know, uh-uh.
no,
You're
no.
not their target audience. They don't care if you die. That's the truth. That is the truth of the
Well,
matter.
and I mean, and the other truth is that the insurance plans that are available to healthcare professionals are so terrible. I mean,
Horrible.
that's the other thing.
Horrible.
It's like, how do I, have all this blood, sweat, and tears for this profession, and then
What are the
like,
advantages?
Right. Yeah. And
Mhm.
I tell people all the
Yeah.
time, like, of course, just like my kids, I come home in the morning and bitch about my shift, and my kids are like, "Oh my God, I will never be in healthcare." Because
Yeah.
I
Mine
mean,
won't
the
touch
amount
it with a 10-foot pole, and I've tried.
dealing with
I've
man
begged.
babies that you have to deal with, and it's
Uh-uh.
you come
Uh-uh.
home and you're just like, oh my God. I mean, and truthfully, it's like, because of quality measures, we have these patients so afraid to even get out of their own bed, because if they
Yeah.
get out of the bed, all these bells and
They might
whistles and
fall.
everything goes,
Yeah.
alarms, and they fall, and
Yeah.
and so it's like they're just laying there in their bed petrified to move, for fear somebody's going to bust in on them, like paparazzi or something.
Chapo.
It's horrible. And mama can't even get out of the bed to go to the bathroom without an alarm going off. Like, and I think it's the environment for healthcare workers. And
It's
I
very
mean, obviously,
toxic.
who's not going to need Alexa Pro after that? I mean,
Yeah.
we
It's
we can't get.
healthcare. Yes. Yes. That's another show topic. Healthcare. Healthcare. Toxic work environments for healthcare officials or healthcare workers. It's true. It's true.
It
I
is.
worry about what's going to happen when we get older and we not need a knee replaced. I tell everybody, I'm like, I don't know that there'll be anybody to do it. Like, we're just going to have to go to the woodshed and drink whiskey, I guess, because nobody wants to do this bullshit anymore. Like, and I get it. I don't even want to put up with it anymore some day, most days, but
Well,
we've,
and I
we've
mean,
created
you
such a
also have.
horrible environment.
Yeah, it is a horrible environment, and it's like, and you see these things on the news about violence against healthcare workers, and of course, but that's also two-sided. you know um I mean, I know for me, like, I recently uh got into a scuffle with an insurance person, and
This was verbally.
it was a
It was
it was a
verbally.
whole misunderstanding verbally. It was a whole misunderstanding verbally. She took it to the nth degree, which, I mean, I was aggressive. I'm not going to lie. I was aggressive because I'm trying to get life-saving treatment
Right.
for my family. And I'm hitting all these ridiculous roadblocks. And no, it was not that girl's fault that day that she answered the phone. It wasn't. But I guess that experience also made me understand why people are losing their shit
Mm-hmm.
in the healthcare space.
Yes.
Because the amount of
Yes.
crap that you have to go through to get the basic necessities covered from these insurance companies
Yep.
and these PBMs, it's
Yep.
it's exhausting and ridiculous, and they depend on it being hard, because if it's hard, you won't fight, and if you
Yes.
won't fight, you don't have to pay.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. I think that's very important. That is something that I tell my patients all the time when we talk about prior authorizations, or they're like, maybe they haven't gotten a card. I see that a lot, that they haven't gotten their prescription insurance card and it's been mailed out, but they've run into something that's preventing them from getting their medication. And many times they're just like, well, can I just pay for it? And I'm like, you can always pay cash. But hear me when I say this, you're paying for this insurance. You
Mhm.
make them work for it. And that means you're going to have to get on the phone and ask them for the information we need to bill. That means you're going to have to call the doctor's office and say, listen, I'm waiting on this prior authorization. Have you guys submitted it? You're going to get all up in their business in ways you don't want to and shouldn't have to. But that's advocacy. And while you're healthcare professionals like Heather and I, we can stand there by your bedside or at the counter and we can help you advocate. We can teach you the terms. You've got to do it for yourself. You have to stand up to your own insurance company and say, I need this. I need this. I expect this. And then you got to go one step further and pick up your phone and call your legislators and say, this is not acceptable. My family of four is paying this and this and this, and this is the level of care we're receiving in healthcare. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
daughter, who's not my daughter, but my daughter is a diabetic, is a type 1 diabetic, and she's 16 years old. And I've been trying to get her insulin from mail order because it's forced for 3 weeks. And now we're out of insulin. and I go to the pharmacy that my insurance company requires because they own it, that's an hour and a half away, leave work early to do that, and they're out of it.
Yeah.
And I have to get on the phone, and then they finally will capitulate and let you get it somewhere else because they know you have a claim if something happens to your child in that instant, because it's going to, but you've got it documented. It's on your phone. You've called all these times. You know, you have got to be that person. You've got to be
Yeah.
that person.
And I mean, in the amount of, as a charge nurse, the amount of phone calls I get, because I work night shift, the amount of phone calls that I get about how people get to the pharmacy and they don't have the right medicine,
Yep.
you know, and there's not
Yep.
like shit I can do about that at 1 o'clock
Yep.
in the morning. It's
Yep.
like, can't really do anything about that.
That has happened to us, and I'm a pharmacist. My
Yeah.
mom's first joint replacement, they sent her home with a blood thinner that was not covered by her insurance. It was a evening, weekend, whatever, and they wanted a prior authorization. And I was like, "Are y'all on crack? Like what? We're not going to get a prior authorization from an orthopedic surgeon who just like replaced this knee." So then I get on the phone and try to get the physician on call, nurse on call, whoever. I get the nurse on call, and she's like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you. That there's nobody on call." And I was like, "What do you mean there's nobody on call? This woman just had a knee replacement. I don't want her to get a clot and throw a clot." And she's like, "Well, there won't be anybody here to like change the prescription. Don't you have a protocol in place for this? This isn't the only blood thinner on the market. Like, what are our options?" And she literally said to me on the phone, "Well, I guess you could just give her an aspirin for tonight, and then in the morning when somebody's in the office, they'll call you back." And I said, "Well, you better hope that aspirin works. What is your name? And where do you work?" Exactly, because sometimes on-call services are not employed by the actual office. Sometimes they're employed, it's
Mm-hmm.
farmed out, just depends. And I was like, because if anything happens to my mother before we get this on board tomorrow, I want to know your name.
Or my favorite one is, well, just come back to the emergency room.
After we just got discharged and drove 2 hours
Do you
home from a
know
knee
how much it
replacement.
cost me to go to the
Yes,
emergency room?
yes.
And because I actually have to pay for that out of my piggy bank,
Mhm.
I am concerned about that. Now, maybe other people don't have to pay for that out of their piggy bank, but for me,
A
it's
lot of
five
people
hundred
do.
dollars. Five hundred
Hmm.
dollars in any emergency room that does not result in an admission. It is $500.
Yes, that doesn't surprise me.
And so it's like when you say just come back to the emergency room, that incenses me. You know,
Well,
it's like
I don't
no,
blame you. I do not blame
what
you.
the heck?
And I know the specific situation you're referring to. And in that situation, a pharmacist could not have helped. But I
Right.
will say to patients or people who are listening, you're all my patients. You just don't know it. um, Anybody listening, if you are in a bind of some sort and you're not sure medically what to do, call your pharmacist. Now, all the pharmacists are out there like going, "Do not call us. Do not drag us into your mess." But here's the reasoning behind that. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions to the problems that people call me for. But sometimes I know other people that do, and I can get you to them. And that the networking that a pharmacist can have can sometimes be your lifeline. So call your local, like, first of all, know who your person is, know your pharmacist well enough, you know what they look like and what their name is, and form a relationship with them, not where you're asking for favors, because my patients are not calling asking for favors, they're asking for help so that they know who you are and they can try to help you in any way
Right.
they can, whether that means making a suggestion to a different drug that you can purchase over the counter, or hey, you know what, this clinic is open and they're urgent care, but you're not going to have to pay $500. Like, we can help you navigate on the weekends and after hours, not at home. Don't be calling folks at home now, but call a 24-hour Walgreens and ask their pharmacist, you know, which ER is closest, which ER has the best turnover, what's your personal opinion? They won't say anything bad, but they'll say, if you were mine, I would take you here. That's the information you're looking for and you need. So try to make use of the people in your healthcare community. They'll help you.
Yeah.
They'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, it is healthcare. Just the whole healthcare space is just an unwinnable labyrinth.
It really is. I've gotten to where I just keep post-its by my computer or like scrap paper. And when I have to talk to patients about navigating stuff, I write down those key phrases like opt out or income review because they don't know. Like all they heard me say was you need to call your insurance company. So I've gotten to where I don't write paragraphs. I just give them a few like this, this, this. Say exactly these words and they can't deny you. And then they'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, because the insurance companies, they count on you not knowing.
Sure.
They
Oh,
count.
1000%. Thousand
Yeah,
percent. Thousand
yeah,
percent. Kind of like Mr. Incredible. Remember him doing that in the movie? He was like,
yeah,
if you say this,
yeah.
your claim will get paid. That's what we do. You got to know the lingo. You got to know the terminology.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I
Anyway.
think I made it clear in those interviews that I had with insurance companies that that's the kind of person I would be. And so they're like, yeah,
And
our
that
bottom
is
line
why Heather
is
doesn't
take,
work for an insurance
yeah,
company.
our
And
bottom
that's
line
why I
is
don't
we
either
get
right now.
this. You
You
know,
at this rate, I'm going to end up teaching high school science to kids who don't like me. Just completely alienate myself from the healthcare community. But I don't know, care about patients, and that's not changing anytime soon.
right. Same. Same. And I wish going to work didn't make me so frustrated because I do care about actually taking care of patients.
Yeah,
And I mean, and there are so many, we could run this podcast every day for the next 10 years and have different
yes,
topics to talk
yes,
about the ways that our current system is failing us. Um, and it's only getting worse. I think over the last,
yes,
my 25-year career in healthcare, I've seen some very drastic shifts of things that just
yes.
really, really don't make any kind of sense.
Nope.
And they don't help anybody. And it definitely doesn't make anyone's life easier. Like, it makes
Or safe.
no one's life easier except for the billionaire class. Those are the only people whose life it makes easier. And it's just because they don't have to give up any of that money if we don't know how to fight them back.
Nope. That's
And,
right.
I mean, the same can be true for the current state of the country. It's like, we don't have anything going on up there right now that doesn't benefit the billionaire class. and
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
there, I think we've, I would love to say that we have learned that trickle down economics don't actually trickle down to anybody,
They
but I
don't.
still feel like we still have people who are
They
voting for
don't.
those outdated principles. There's just like, oh, I mean, well, if they've got the money, they'll pass it on. Clearly they will not.
They will not, or your health insurance wouldn't cost an arm and a leg.
Right. I mean,
Because
to think about,
if they really cared about the citizens of their country in the way that they claim to, then everybody would have the same kind of health care that their family and their billionaire family has. They would have the
exactly.
same kind of access. And so I think that's what people should really think about too. Like, what kind of access to health care do extraordinarily wealthy Americans have that you don't? And I'm not talking about plastic surgery. Don't go there. Don't be that person. I'm talking about you need 4 bypasses. Do you think that Mr. Smith, that works the line at Tyson, you're going to get the same care as a billionaire in America?
No,
No,
you're not.
you are
No,
absolutely not.
because
That's
you can go hop on your private jet and fly yourself to anywhere in the world.
anywhere. And
And
you've probably got a medical specialist that does nothing for you every year but find those people for your whole family.
yeah, well, and I mean, just the fact that medical tourism is a thing.
That's
It,
a podcast.
I
We're
mean,
doing that one. I
yeah,
am
I mean,
on board for that.
it's like I need some dental work done, and like my
Yeah.
friend, she goes, just go to Mexico. You need to go over here, and so I started researching it, and I was like,
I'll
oh
chaperone you.
God, like I could literally go to Mexico, get everything I need to have
Yeah.
done for
Yeah.
less than the cost of 1 crown
Yeah.
in the United States. And
Wow.
like they have excellent reviews and all these things. And it just, it makes you wonder, why is it that their healthcare is so much less expensive and more affordable. And I guess the question that I do have is it as affordable to their citizens as it is to us if we go do that?
It may not be. I don't know.
You know.
That's a good question. I'll tell you what, I wish I knew, but I'm so worried about our own current state of affairs.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it's
know,
gonna hair is gonna take some hits, and I don't think, you know, again, I think it just comes from a massive misunderstanding of what these actual organizations actually do. You know,
you're right.
NSAID. You know, I bet nobody thought that NSAID was going to hurt cotton farmers in Texas, but here we are. Um,
Here we are. Here we are.
And, you know, I don't think that anybody thought that thinks about in their day to day life when they're thinking about the allocation of their tax dollars, how much things like the NIH and the studies that
Mm,
they provide
yes,
support to
yes,
really contribute to the overall and everyday well being of the citizens, or even the CDC.
yes.
And,
The
you know, that we're
FDA.
monitoring and
And
tracking.
and we are not saying that any of these government organizations are perfect and don't need to be reviewed, don't need to have transparency, don't have not had problems. Like I've got my own issues with several of them that we can talk about some other time that are real issues that shouldn't be ignored. But to unilaterally come in and just start shutting things down and firing people when you have no working knowledge of how the system is built to get a drug to the pipeline, and you just took out one of the integral cogs of that, and now instead of it costing, $515 million to get something to market, it's going to cost double that, triple that, or it's also going to increase the time it takes for us to get that drug to market because we
Mhm.
might still be able to do all the work, but it's going to take us longer because we got fewer people doing it, right?
Yeah.
And but also I think that a lot of that speaks to the haves and the have-nots of education and
Hmm.
understanding. And also we talk about dismantling the public education system and all of that. Well, the more space you have between the understanding of what things require to function versus what the education level of your populace, the easier they are to manipulate.
Sure. Sure.
The
And the
easier
sad
they are
part
to
is that when
manipulate.
you watch C-SPAN, because I do watch C-SPAN because I'm a nerd and I like to know what's going on in the political spectrum. And I don't like sound bites or clips. I want to see the whole real time
Right. I
shit
do
show.
like seeing the whole thing. I don't want the 30
And
seconds. I want the 13 minutes or whatever.
right. And the amount
Right.
of people who are sitting in the seats up there on high in the shining city also have zero understanding
Mhm.
of the things that they're
Voting
cutting,
on.
yeah,
Yes.
the voting
Yes.
on, that they don't understand their own regulatory processes, and it's so
No.
frustrating.
No, they
It's
don't,
so
and it's scary.
frustrating. I mean, I think a really good example of that too is like, so when we had our COVID, in the beginning, planning early stages of COVID, when I was working in the nursing home, they sent a team of these experts. Okay, they thought they were being super super helpful. They sent a team of these experts
Mm,
to come to each nursing home and help us assess our threat risk.
good
And
Lord.
so I've got these people,
High.
and my
Your threat risk is high. That's what I can tell you right now.
my panel of people was like a clinical research pharmacist, like an infectious disease specialist, highly educated, what would seem to be very qualified
Right.
people to make
Right.
these sort of recommendations. And so they come in, and I'm just sitting through this evaluation with them, and they're making all of these outlandish recommendations. And I'm saying,
You're giving me
my
3 times the
nursing
nursing
home
staff.
is run predominantly
Yeah.
by people who are not formally educated in infectious
Right.
disease.
Right.
They have never, most of them in their careers, had to truly dress out in an
Mm,
isolation
mm,
fashion to
mm,
prevent
mm.
the spread of one person to another.
Right.
You're
PPE.
suggesting that they come in and they wear N95s 24/7, doing patient care, trying to give showers to people in full PPE.
There's no way. No
And
way.
you're expecting compliance with this? Like, and then let's
Yeah.
not even talk about environmentally. This building was built in the 60s. It has
Right.
central
We all
air.
share the same unit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
That's what we ran
central
into too.
air handling. Like, if
Um,
one person in this building gets COVID, it will be disseminated.
within 30 minutes, if that long.
Everyone will be exposed. And so it's
Yeah.
like you can put up all the plastic little walls you want to, and all of these.
Yeah.
And the cost of those recommendations, which also didn't help, not one iota, you know, um, is crazy. And so it's like, so even sometimes when they send you like people who you would think would be
Right.
experts in the
It's
field,
not common sense
if
workable.
you take them out of their environment and you send them to a nursing home environment where they are dealing with people who literally don't have any kind of understanding, and not to mention the huge misinformation and propaganda crap we were
Oh,
battling at the
yeah.
time,
That's a whole other issue.
it's like you can't
Yeah.
make them understand and you can't make them care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a great example of that was some of my CNAs at the beginning of when we had our COVID outbreak. They were saying, well, if you've been exposed to COVID or if you've had COVID, then you can work. Those are the people who should be predominantly working your COVID unit, which makes sense, right? Immunity, right? What they didn't
Theoretically.
account for is that it's the only time that the CNAs who make barely above minimum wage in the state of Texas are going to make that extra $10 an hour to go work the COVID unit. So
Oh,
guess what they were
no.
doing?
No, they were not.
They were
They were not having
exposing
chickenpox
themselves
parties.
to this.
They were intentionally risking their lives.
Yeah, like the chicken pox or some shit.
That's what I'm saying, like chickenpox parties. Yeah.
Right. But the reality of that is
Terrifying.
is that we don't pay people a living wage in this country.
No.
And
No.
so these girls saw an opportunity where they wouldn't have to work that fifth or sixth overtime shift for the week in order to,
Right.
make their money. And then you got into the whole what is fair? Like everybody should have the opportunity. And I'm just like, so so you all want to be exposed to a deadly disease for $10 like that?
That should speak volumes to people about the state of our healthcare system as well. When you've got people who are trying to make a living
Hmm.
and take care of their family and they're willing to expose themselves to something that could kill them. And we don't really at that time really did not know who was more at risk versus wasn't, other than maybe age. And we still don't fully understand that. I don't think we will for a long time. I mean, that should tell us everything we need to know about direct patient care workers. That's and again, you have people at very high levels who don't understand what that kind of um, decision making process even looks like, because
Yeah.
they've never been in a position where they had to work like that just to pay the basic necessities of life.
Well, and then as the only person in the building who had done direct bedside care for actual sick patients, then I had the corporation telling me that I couldn't go back and work the COVID unit because someone had to be running the front of the house. And I'm thinking to myself, and
The front of the
I
house
said,
isn't
well,
the problem. The
I
back's on
said, I
fire.
want to make sure that these people live. And you want
Right.
to know what their response was? We're not as concerned about that.
Why is that not? Why am I not surprised?
Because if I wasn't in the front making sure that all of the regulations were being documented, I'm going to say documented. Documented. And we got a state visit, then the cost of paying the fines and the immediate jeopardy and everything else was the primary concern. So, you get yourself into this. This is why I won't ever do healthcare administration anymore, because I don't want to be on the other side of the screen making those, for one, having to control my face while I'm being,
Well, clearly you can't. I mean, I
yeah,
can't either. We
I'm just like,
We are not face controllers.
I'm
If
not
you
a
all
face
at home
controller.
haven't figured that out, if we're
Yeah.
thinking, it's right here.
Right. And so just the craziest, you would have to deal with like the craziest stuff that they would say to you. And then after you get through your COVID outbreak and all of this hell that you've been through, because, everybody in the nursing home gets it. I've never seen a nursing home where your original outbreak didn't just encompass every single person in the nursing home.
Of course.
And you go through 3 months of hell for that. And then they're like, oh, now we have to cut your staff.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Yep. Lived it. Lived
And
it.
I'm like, man, I've got a couple of flying birds I'd like to show you right now, but I need to find another job first so that I can, continue,
We need to discuss,
having.
like, we need to talk about what COVID, that needs to go on our list too, is what COVID was like for each of us. And it could be its own podcast for each of us, what COVID looked like,
Oh, for sure.
the healthcare professional, like boots on the ground, because the general public has no concept of what that looked like at all.
No, they really don't. And
Bad.
I mean,
It was
and
really
in
bad.
some ways, I'm really glad that they do not know, because it was just a horrific time, and I
Yeah,
really,
I
really
kind of do.
worry about, especially with like the CDC's, funding issues right now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, they should be real
How
scared
we,
right now. Yeah, they should be real
yeah,
scared. They better,
yeah,
yes, they should be very concerned that there is a lack of structure and funding at a federal level if we have an outbreak of anything.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, and just the things that we're seeing rising, now. I mean, well, of course, I
Yeah.
work in Lubbock, so the amount of like neurosyphilis I see is astronomical. Like Raider rash is like a
What?
real thing.
For real?
And yeah, I mean, yes, yes, yes,
I'm gonna need the details of that
yes.
later.
And then, I used to never see acute HIV patients. Like I hadn't seen
You're
that in
seeing them again?
years. And I'm seeing acute HIV patients in the direct care space now. Which is, and new diagnosis HIV patients. Crazy. Um, I mean, that was really all something that we
I
all
don't
but
want to live through that
got a
again. We
rat.
lived through that the first time with HIV.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
as children, y'all, we were kids, but like it was in the news and there was all of this, and we were in this space, like we were coming to maturity, sexual maturity, in a time where HIV was a very real thing, and there was very little
Mm-hmm.
treatment, and what treatment they did have was incredibly expensive and horrible on your body. Like people were dying from the side effects before they could ever get to
Mm-hmm.
full blown AIDS. So like I cannot believe we are living to see that again.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And so it is
Good.
really, and now we have a measles outbreak. We have over 125 cases in Lubbock. And I'm just like, what in the world is happening? Like we have just completely fallen away.
It's like
Um,
1953. It really,
yeah.
that's what it feels
Yeah.
like sometimes.
And so it's really weird. It's really weird being in the direct care space right now. And I want out. Like I want out.
Please let me out of haunted boiling.
Please let me out.
I did not do that. I
I
did.
I barely make it through my 3 shifts a week, and actually just dropped a part time at my main gig because
Because she
it's just
can't do
gotten
it
to
anymore,
be
y'all.
it's gotten to be too much.
Yeah,
It's
they're
gotten to
breaking it.
be too,
They're breaking
and
it. I agree.
I've just
I
reached
agree.
that age where I want a soft life, and
Yeah,
yeah. So
same.
anyway,
Same. All right. So that's not everything about American pharmacy healthcare issues, but that's a good bit of it. Now you know why your drugs cost so much and why you need to learn to
yeah,
be, or why you need to learn to be your own advocate. And of course, Heather and I welcome any questions. You're welcome to email us, comment on any of our stuff. If there's something that you have additional questions about that you want us to talk about, just put that in there too, because it is confusing. Pharmacy benefits are confusing, and sadly, I know a lot of the answers.
yeah. And I mean, and at some point when we have some distance from this current situation that we find ourselves
She put
we
that
will have
so
to
nicely. Did you hear
have
that,
another
guys?
podcast about advocating for yourself when you know
Yes,
how to advocate for yourself and how still
yes,
horrendously difficult that is to be cool, calm, and collected and not completely lose your shit, which I will say on the record, I have not been successful at. I've not. I I
Okay.
have
Well, I
probably
will
in
say on the
certain
record,
spaces.
I have been successful at that thus far, but people still don't like me because
Mm,
of it. When you
I'm sure
advocate,
there's an asterisk and a red Karen next to my name in some
oh,
spaces,
definitely, yeah, for me too.
but
Yeah,
I feel
but
like
it's okay.
it's like you have to poke the bear,
You do.
you know.
You have to be the squeaky wheel. You have to be the person that they know is going to be at their door at 8 o'clock every Monday morning or on the phone. Like you have to be the person they do not want to see or hear from. And you have to do it a lot. And it's not fun. Like nobody gets up in the morning and says, let me see how big of a bitch I can be today to people who are trying to do their job. I mean, there
Right.
might be people out there, but it's not me and
Right.
it's not Heather, okay? Like there probably are people out there that are just mean, but that's not us. Like we genuinely just want what is fair and what is protected by law and what we're
Yeah.
paying for. And
Right.
people don't like that. And I hate that I know I'm a people pleaser. I don't think Heather, are you a people pleaser?
I mean,
I don't feel like
in
you
some
are.
circles, not anymore. I mean, I feel like that
Okay.
kind of got beat out of me, in healthcare.
Well,
Is
mine's
like
getting beat out, is
you,
what I'm learning. Yes. Like
yeah.
it's getting
I used to care a
yeah,
great deal about.
mine is getting just continually waylaid out of me. And through no request or fault of my own. I don't want it. Like I realize being a people pleaser is probably not healthy, but I could have lived my whole entire life without um having to say and do some of the things that I've had to say and do in order to protect the rights of the people that needed to be
Mhm.
protected and to advocate
Yes.
in the way that had to be done because I
Right.
and again when we have some more space later we can quit being like vague about it, but it's not it is the worst feeling in the world to know that you're having for me to know that I'm having to hold somebody's feet to the fire about something that they may or may not control everything about either, and I get
Hmm.
that too, but that doesn't make them less responsible for the situation.
Right.
Because I want to be everybody's cheerleader, like you're doing a great job. But the truth is that sometimes people aren't doing a great job. Sometimes they're doing way less than a great job. And people suffer from that. And it has to be addressed, whether it's with your family or your patients. Like you have to learn to advocate. You just have to. You have to. And if you've been raised in a polite Southern home, I pray to God when I pray to Him that you never have to be that person. Like you can just live your whole life and you never have to be that person because
Right.
people say things about you. And because I still live in a small town and live in my hometown, there have been things said and that's fine. I can deal with it now. But it's very painful when people say things and, you know, assume things about you because you choose to advocate instead of just sit down, shut up, and deal with it. And it's like, no. How about no? How about no? We're not doing
Oh,
that anymore.
yeah. Well, I
That's
mean,
what we've
you
been doing. It's not
you
working.
get no you get no gold stars in any area of your life for being an advocate.
Nope.
And that comes even when I was managing at the
Mhm.
nursing home, trying to actually do things to, like, you have all these like abusive employers that say, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're family."
No, you're not.
and
You're not
and
family.
like in the
You're not.
nursing home space, there's so little money for the actual staff that
Yeah.
you the only way, like, we don't have a bunch of money to throw around, so the only thing we've got is our looks and personality, right? And so even when you're trying to help your coworkers, like with certain situations, so that everybody can maintain a gainful employment, or
Right.
getting through the people, because you do have to support the people who are there, because
Right.
Snyder, Texas is not full of CNAs who don't have
You can't do
licenses.
it by
Okay,
yourself.
they're just not there, and so you do, on one hand, have to put up with your fair share amount of tomfoolery to keep the seats filled because there's no one to replace them, and you know that. And then the other thing that you have to do is also probably do things as a manager for people that you wouldn't normally have to do if just because you have to maintain your staffing. And let me just
Yep.
tell you that people get pissed if you are doing something that benefits another person that doesn't directly benefit them.
Oh yes.
And the direction that being pissed comes from is often surprising because you're just like, and and you can say to people, if you were in the same boat, I would do the same for you,
But
and
they're not.
they still
But
don't
yeah,
get
but
it,
I'm not,
you
and I
know.
still want it.
And
Yeah.
so it's like,
Yeah.
well, I guess I'm gonna be a bitch and stand my ground and let them talk shit about me,
Mhm.
because
Let them.
I will say this:
Let them.
the reason that I feel this way is because when my mom was dying of ovarian cancer, her brain was so bad in the last 6 months of her life. That woman had absolutely no business working. None. No business. She didn't need to be around machinery. She didn't need to be answering the phone. Like, she was
Yeah.
real good at holding the mask in place, but any careful inspection under the surface would definitely show you how bad of a deficit she was working with.
Right.
And her job kept her employed until she reached Medicare age. Thank God. Thank God. And that simple act of kindness.
Yeah.
And even though there were people, because I know that there were people at her workplace who did not agree with what they were doing,
Right.
from my perspective, I couldn't be more thankful. And so I try
Right.
to, like, when I was a manager, would approach things from that sort of perspective, because my mom had been a good and faithful employee to that place for 20 something years.
Mhm.
And, her boss was just, he will always have a star in heaven, as far as I'm concerned. Because had he not done that, we would have been super squirrel fucked in so many ways.
Right.
So,
Which also speaks to our healthcare because nobody should have to be to the point that they are so sick that because they don't have Medicare, they can't go to the house and die with peace and
right,
dignity. She was
right,
dragging herself to work long past the stage of where she should have been like she should have been able to retire to you. No, she didn't want to, but given her state of affairs and her mental status, like she should have been able to retire to you and have some sort of um, health insurance, something, because you shouldn't be fighting cancer and dying from it and still having to
right.
work in order to maintain your insurance. That there is something that is inherently wrong, in my opinion, as a human being, to do that to another human being. I feel like that's a form of torture to put
It
that kind of
is. It
stress
is,
on
because
someone and worry.
that middle road where she was at, is like, she either would have had to pay all of her money out to Cobra
Right.
over, because I believe she was like a year and 6 months short when she was initially diagnosed to being retirement age, or when it came back, I think. And
Yeah.
so she would have had to either pay out all the money that she'd saved in her retirement account to Cobra to maintain her insurance, just so that she could have the hospice benefit, which seems so
It's ridiculous.
ridiculous.
It's
You know
ridiculous.
what I mean?
That is because,
And
again, the whole, well, why can they have something but I can't have it? And it's
right.
when, because people in America, many of them operate from a mindset of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you give them an apple, there won't be an apple for me. Instead of we can split the apple type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's very simplified. But I think a lot of decisions are made at many levels from a space of scarcity. Well,
Oh yeah.
I don't want them to get their student loans paid off because I had to pay for mine. What does that
Mm-hmm.
have to do with the price of peace? If
Right.
overall our country functions better and healthier because we are able to put people through college and they can come out and then economically can get a job. It helps the economy in that they can then buy a house. But but keeping them in basically student loan jail their entire life also keeps them, with a landlord. So
Yeah,
again, you have this stratosphere. We're off the topic. We are so off
we
the topic.
sure are.
Okay.
We done went
Sorry.
off the rails for a
Gosh,
minute.
we love you. We'll do better eventually. I don't know when. Sometime. You got to advocate. No. Um, Heather, it was good chatting with you, as
It's
always.
good chat with you,
I
for
know.
sure.
We got to get together and chat together in real, like
Yeah,
face to face time, like same room time.
for sure.
That episode might be 6 hours. Who knows? We don't. Anyway. All right. Well, until next time, guys,
We'll see
advocate.
you. All right. Bye.
Talk to you later, babe.
Bye.